You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 485, our coverage of the Bad Batch Season 2, with an episode that was called Retrieval, Part 2 to last week's episode. And, I've got some feelings about this episode. Not that it was a bad episode, but I'm still scratching my head after this one. And I know I'm not the only one because I talked to him just before we came on the air a little bit about it. And with me tonight is our special guest, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I just noticed your tagline, worth 3/4 portions, and I have stealing is a skill. I'm glad you posted it. I was actually going to post a picture of Unkar Plutt and this jerkface, Mako, or whatever his name was, together, because I'm almost positive these guys are like brothers from another mother in some weird way. And throw Watto in there too, right? Like all three of them are jerk faces.
They are, yeah.
So now that we got that out of the way, how are you doing this fine evening, sir?
Doing all right, man. I think we are getting ramped up for Mandalorian, and stay tuned at the end. We'll regurgitate it is then about some programming notes about what we've got on the slate for everyone here. It's about to get a little bit crazy, of course, but Mando next week. A little Mando final hype this weekend, maybe for some folks. So that's pretty exciting too. So really getting ramped up about that, man. The ads are coming out, the little profile clips. Got some new posters. So all sorts. The media machine is cranked up for Mando.
Yeah, it's Mando season again. And in fact, not to jump into news, because it's really not. This is probably more speculation than anything else. It's in the rumor mill, but I saw today they're already talking about filming season 4 in October of this year. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So I think we're guaranteed at least a 4th season. This again, not official, but from good sources, which means I think originally we had predicted 4-5 seasons. Maybe is where this thing would go. Right. Maybe it goes that far. Maybe it goes even longer. We'll see how far they want to milk this thing, but. Hey, but let's segue into our news, because you got a couple things in here that I have not been keeping up with, and I'm like, I want to know more about this. So tell me, Jonesy, what's going on in Star Wars news?
Well, it actually just prompted one too. So there's been some interviews with Tony Gilroy lately. I mean, Albert just walked away. He has lost interest in everything about the news that he just said he was so interested in, by the way.
No, I am listening. I'm listening.
But yeah, so Tony Gilroy talked a little bit about when we can expect season 2 for Andor. And you and I had spoken about this too, that we knew it takes about a year for them to do the show. And I think we were speculating maybe first quarter of 2024, but now it looks like it's going to be closer to the fall of 2024 before Andor would come out. And it might be late fall 2024 before Andor comes out. Mm-hmm. So again, not surprising. They're in production right now. When they wrap up production, it takes about a year from that point for them to finish the show, get all the music, do all the effects, do the color grading, all of that good stuff. They put a lot of time and work into it. So again, that's a long ways away. I mean, that's a year and a half away, it feels like, right? So that's a really long time away. In other similar news, Rosario Dawson just continues to kind of leak things, and it seems like Ahsoka, and I think
God bless her heart, by the way. She's doing the Lord's work, but go on. Sorry.
And again, this isn't really that big of a deal, I think. When something's going to come out isn't like the end of the world.
Sure.
Right? I mean, people get expectations and they call it official, but it's not, these aren't really that big of a deal. But anyway, so Ahsoka seems like it's slated for a fall release as well of this year. Again, not necessarily super surprising. Late fall, maybe, somewhere in there, early late fall or mid to late fall, something like that. So again, not really surprising given the slate of content that we've got coming. So we'll see that coming soon there too. But again, no real surprises there. But the real big surprise, Albert, is that your girlfriend is coming to Galaxy of Heroes. The Tusken warrior herself is coming to Galaxy of Heroes, the mobile game. For those that may not be familiar, her special ability is to hit things and grunt loudly.
Is that the official tagline for that character?
That's the video they showed, was basically her just hitting things with her gaffy stick.
Oh, she's awesome. She's still alive, by the way.
Well, I mean, this just proves it, right?
Yeah,
She couldn't be in a video game. She was dead.
No. Well, if that's the case, then Revan's still alive. And
Vader's still alive.
Vader, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't played that game now. Actually, because I jumped back on Marvel Puzzle Quest. So you have this tendency to pull me from one game and then go to the next. But I think I pulled you from games. I think we're even at this point. But you pulled me over to Marvel Puzzle Quest, and I'm still playing that. But I kind of gave up on Galaxy Heroes, and I'm so far behind now. I don't know if I'd ever go back. It's just
if you don't pump a lot of money,
task.
Yeah, if you don't pump a lot of money into that game, it's really. Yeah, it's
of course, I would never do that.
It's right. Yeah, you would never do that. I'm still stuck on Marvel Snap. I'm still playing a lot of Marvel Snap, and I know a lot of that had some backlash too. That it got to be too pay to play and whatever, but I'm still having a good time with it. I'm competitive, so I have fun with that.
But to bring it back to Star Wars, like I do enjoy like the wealth and kind of like the large net that they've cast of characters in Galaxy Heroes is pretty impressive. Like they're not sticking to just canon. They've gone to canon, Legends. I mean, you name it, everybody is in that game, which is really kind of cool to see and play. So,
and that they've been able to leverage ships and things like that too in different ways.
Yeah.
I think, and even like a raid type of environment, although the raid's a little bit wonky to do, I think, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. But anyway, so a little bit of mobile gaming for everyone. More celebration announcements. Again, none of these are super surprising, but wanted to confirm Carl Weathers will be there, of course. Warwick Davis, again, everyone expects Warwick to be there, but Denise Goff will be there. Or Stedjamiro, yeah, so she will be there.
Oh,
Brian Herring, who does BB-8, the control, and then Samantha Aliane, who is a stormtrooper and various other characters, I think kind of background characters as well. She is planning to attend as well, so that's pretty exciting. More celebration news. Again, we are less than a month and a half out now. I would say is February 23rd, so a lot of exciting things there. And then the last bit of news, for those that are out in California or maybe going out to Disneyland, they're going to do Disneyland After Dark, and they're going to have Star Wars nights in May. And so if you're out there in the area, if maybe you're going to be in the area, or you're going to thinking about going to Disneyland, May 2nd, 4th, 8th, and the 11th will be a Star Wars night. I believe these are specific ticketed events. So you would need a park pass, plus you would need the ticket. And tickets are between $149 and $169 per person for that event in the evening. Now they're going to do things like fireworks. They're going to do special parades. They're going to do all the things. So if you've been to a Disney after hours event or an evening park event, the holiday parties, the Halloween parties, Christmas parties, all that, similar concept. And this is only at Disneyland in California. This is not going to be at Walt Disney World, at least not this year. So if you're a big Disney file or you're going to be out there, you want to do an event, you got 4 days in early May to go and check that out.
Why would they do May 4th?
Tickets are available right now. They went on sale today, by the way.
Yeah, and we don't get profits, by the way, but nice plug there. Yeah.
Well, no, people are interested in that. And this, you and I have talked about this. Like, Galactic Star Cruise are so expensive. Spending a day in the park and all that's really expensive too. So it's nice you have some extra events to give the mouse a little bit more money. But, going for a day, if you live in the area, I can imagine a lot of locals would eat this kind of thing up. And they do a good job of this stuff. It is fun,
Yeah. So. And I think if I was like for me, I know it sounds $150 is not, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But given what they're probably going to do for this Star Wars specific event, I would do that. I mean, plus it's not like they do this every time, right? So it is kind of limited. So, and
it's a special time of year. It's like when they do the actual cruise ships, they'll do a Star Wars night on the cruise ships, I think now as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so one example is they'll do a projection on the castle of like hyperspace and things like that. That's just one of the scenes, right?
Yeah.
But it's just an experience. I mean, it's just fun. Again, if you've got the extra, if you're a little flush with cash, maybe Santa was good to you this year. It's something to consider doing. Again, we get no kickbacks, but it's just an experience. It's fun to do if you can.
Right. No, all good stuff. I'm excited about that. Excited about Star Wars Celebration. The rumors continue to spin about a movie being announced in some fashion. We're not going to probably get a trailer or anything like that, but you may get a title card. Again, just rumors, purely speculation. I know we don't tend to talk about that too much here on the show, but there's enough weight behind this now that it does sound like they're going to announce something. Who knows what it's going to be and to what extent, but something's coming. So should be exciting.
You know what I'm always happy to announce every week, Albert?
I'm going to guess. No, I don't know. What is it, Jonesy?
How much we care about our Patreons and how much we appreciate their patronage every month. Especially our now part of the tribe members, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, and Uncle Leon. And then Delusions of Grandeur tier, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Countered. Thank you so much. Again, if you're interested in Patreon content, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We'll get you over to all of the tiers. You can take a look at there. All of the exclusive content starts at just a couple dollars a month. If you are interested in coming onto the show, like it sounds like we might have a revisit of season 2.
We are.
Yeah. So you want to talk about that real fast? What people can expect on Sunday?
Yeah. So this Sunday, we finally got to, if you remember, we met a few weeks ago with a number of our Patreon folks to talk about our top 3 moments of season 1 from The Mandalorian. This Sunday, we're going to be talking about our top 3 moments from season 2, which should be a good, considering that, plus the final hype show that we got with Mandalorian, that should get you your appetite whet if you're not already for season 3. So excited to do that, kind of come back and talk about that. And man, there were some really great moments in season 2, like many more than I think in season 1. I think they really overdid themselves in season 2. So it's going to be a fun discussion.
Yeah, that will be. So again, you want to go out and check that out. If you're interested in coming on the show, those top 2 tiers give you that opportunity as well. Please check them out. If you're listening to this, we appreciate you listening. If you're downloading this, we appreciate you listening as well. And if you are listening to this and you want to come check us out on the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube will bring you out there and you can watch the live streams. And again, we do this on Sundays and Thursdays most times. But this week, you're going to get us today, which is Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see us on Sunday. And then we're going to throw a special one on Saturday for Mando Final Hype. So, I mean, you get us 3 times in the next 3 days, 4 days. Math is hard. 3 of 4. And then we're going to come back again next week and do Mando on release night. And then that weekend, we're going to give you Bad Batch. And then we're going to be on this Mando Bad Batch extravaganza. So you're going to want to be here for all of it, because it's going to be pretty crazy. Slipping in some shows in between, probably way overselling us. We are committed now. We can't move it. Lauren's gonna join us on the season premiere show for Mando next Wednesday. So that's super exciting. She's got more Jedi novel archive stuff coming out as well. So extremely exciting. This book right behind me, Jedi Battle Scars, coming out. The embargo releases. Yeah, there you go. You got it too. The embargo is released yesterday. So she's got that out. So check out the YouTube channel again for all of the latest on the books.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming. And
there you go, Jeff, the Man Batch.
The man.
Yeah, the Bachelorian.
The Bachelorian. There we go.
It actually kind of works. It's like the Bachelorette, but the Bachelorian.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been looking at some of our friends that are also doing Star Wars shows, either podcasts or YouTube channels, feeds, that kind of thing, and they're all struggling with these first world problems that we have. It's like there's so much Star Wars coming out in the next 2 weeks. Like, how the heck are we covering it all? And where are we going to cut? Do we need to cut? That sort of thing. I've seen some folks even reach out to their followers and just say, like, okay, given the choice between, all of this, which would you rather we cover? So I think it's probably, it's a great situation to be in, to be honest, because who would have thought we would have ever been here? Again, I know this sounds like a dead horse that we've beaten so many times, but 20 years ago, to think that we'd be in this kind of a scenario.
Well, hell, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I still remember us. We're like, man, what are we going to cover this week? Like, we were scraping the barrel. Yeah. It felt like sometimes to come up with something original or good, because there was nothing new coming out, right? Even the books were a little few and far between. So we have a spoil of riches these days. That is 100% for true.
By the way, Lauren is with us tonight. Lauren, hi, Lauren. Okay, so lots of stuff coming down the pipe, and I think with that, we will. So let's jump into.
Speaking of pipes,
long shafts of smoke and fire. We're gonna jump right into Retrieval. Okay, so let's give me your thoughts on this, because I think you and I are probably coming from the same place here, and it's a place of love. It's a place of heart. It's a place that's a very earnest place. But I would say I didn't like this episode nearly as much as I liked the last one. I felt like the last one, and there are probably some reasons why, and I'll get into those here throughout the episode, but I didn't like it as much as the first one. And I don't know that I really thought this was like one of the best episodes, arguably, in my opinion, probably one of the weaker episodes of the Bad Batch. And there's some reasons why that. There were some good moments. And I keep going back to this thing. Did I hate the episode? No, I didn't hate it. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I mean, there were some great moments in here. But I think where I feel like I'm probably speaking for the masses is that this does feel like we went right back into tried and true Bad Batch storytelling that we've already gone over so many times before. And I'm really struggling to kind of come away with, like, what was the purpose of this? I mean, it's nuanced. I'll leave it at that, and I'll get into it a little bit more. But what are your thoughts? How are you feeling after watching the episode?
Yeah, in a word, it was flat, I think. And I think to your point, it was, again, it was a lot of the same themes presented to us again, and sometimes multiple times within this episode. And so it was enjoyable, but it wasn't enjoyable to the extent I think the rest of the season has been. Even when we haven't had the really heavy hitting moments, it was always this really cool entertainment factor that it felt fun. It felt like we'd get a little nugget here and that was cool and that was fine. But this one was just a lot of the same, unfortunately. And it didn't really feel like it pushed things along a lot or really much at all. It kind of did feel like it didn't need to really be a two-parter. They could have found a way to combine these episodes into one a little bit longer episode. It would have made more sense. Now the number of episodes would have been odd at that point. Again, we don't know what the rest of the season looks like quite yet because we didn't get the advanced screenings. But so we'll have to see how that plays out. But it just felt flat. I mean, it just kind of felt like ho hum, and that's unfortunate because I think the series in this season, I think in particular, has just been so entertaining.
Yeah.
And then we have one like this that just feels like the same old, of not necessarily just Bad Batch, but just kind of, yeah, okay, yeah, we need to get to the next place. Yeah, Empire's bad. Yeah, there's other bad people. It's cool. I mean, it was great that Omega kind of learned this lesson again. That's why I put on the title card, like Omega's lesson. Like she has to learn this a bit again, and she sees it from a different perspective. And it was really cool seeing her and Tech at the end interacting. I thought that was a highlight for for me for the episode.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And again, seeing what these kids would do, once they're unshackled from some of this stuff, and when they see opportunity, and this idea of home keeps coming up, and this is becoming more of a prevalent hallmark in this show is this idea about home. So I'm curious where that leads to and where that drives to throughout these last few episodes that we get over the next several weeks.
Yeah, the concept or the idea of what a home is nothing new in Star Wars, and for Omega, it's extremely important given that her home was obliterated, and we've talked about the trauma that's probably come from that. Her struggling with trying to make light of all of these events that have kind of happened before her eyes, and she's not even a teenager at this point, right? So trying to take all that in, and we're not necessarily getting into the deep psychological pieces of all that, although they're probably there. They're enough so that stories like this kind of have to be told. But it's like you said, it's like some of this felt like it was just retread of things that we've already established, right? We want the characters to go, we want them to progress. And a lot of what we were seeing here was very similar to other episodes or other things that have happened either in Star Wars. And that's not really the fault of the Bad Batch, right? But it's just it felt like, and I'm trying not to poo-poo on this episode because there are some moments we're going to talk about. There's some really funny stuff in here and some good stuff that happened, right? But at the same time, I have a hard time. I was trying to come to terms with what the purpose of this episode was. Did it really need to be 2 episodes long? Did we get significant growth in the characters? No. But was it important to Omega? Yeah, 100%. Like this was really about, when you look at the 2 episodes together, it really was about Omega and her perspective and what she was feeling as being part of the team, that breakup now that Echo had left. And then on top of that, now we're getting into this whole piece of, what does it mean to be a family? What does it mean to have a home? All of that makes sense. And I think where this probably is, and I'm not throwing shade against the writer. Her name is Moises Zamora. I don't even know how to say her first name. I apologize. But it felt like it was very disconnected in terms of just the writing styles. Like the characters didn't feel, until the very end, a lot of the characters just felt like they could have been anyone. And like, we didn't have a lot. The only exception to that was Wrecker. Like Wrecker was kind of spot on. We got his dizziness right when he got or afraid of heights thing. He was grunting. He was the juvenile child at the beginning yelling, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm frustrated." Right. But everybody else seemed kind of out of character for me. And just even with, their actions, their dialogue. I mean, Hunter loses a child or 2 kids and he's Hunter.
Right.
Right. It was just, I don't know. And I get that probably happened more for a story element. So I don't want to get too far down on that one, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Jeff,
there was something
Jeff
disconnected.
Did have a good point though in the chat. He said, he really liked the episode. Some Lady Proxima vibes, which was cool. And Omega had the coldest line in the show's history when she said, "You stole the wrong ship," that was kind of amusing. When she said nope and yep. I mean, the smile on her face was great. But no, I caught that too, Jeff, where it felt a little bit like Solo and that dynamic, right? The kids out there doing all this work, not really getting any of the benefits. that type of thing. So I liked the connection there. It was that was a really good feeling. But I think overall, I'm with you. I think it was just the characters just something just felt different about the episode. It just felt generally lacking energy, I think, for the most part.
Right.
And it didn't really have that big climax either. And maybe that's what it was. It didn't really feel like we were really building to much. We know how this story goes. We've seen it 1,000 times, not just in Star Wars, but across the board. Again, not that it has to be super creative or or new or fresh in that kind of way, but it was pretty much telegraphed. We knew how this was going to go. We knew Omega was going to get ratted out at the end. We knew he was going to probably have a turn of heart. She did really kind things. So it was just a lot of checking all the boxes, right?
Yeah.
And reaffirming the things that we knew without necessarily taking anything a noticeable step forward, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about okay, so this is kind of our opening thoughts here. Let's get into the episode breakdown and kind of highlight on some of the stuff that we really enjoyed. Again, I did enjoy Wrecker's character throughout all of this. I forgot he said he was hungry. He's bored, hot, starving. If you have a toddler or anybody under the age of 10 and you've taken them out somewhere, you're bound to hear one of these three things said at any given moment. So, but
you're giving credit. You're giving teenagers way too much credit if you're leaving them out of that.
I'm giving myself way too much credit, or not giving myself a credit enough.
Right.
Because, a lot of times I'm bored, hot, and starving. So this was, the retrieval. Let's get back to the title real quick. The retrieval, we speculated about what that would be. I think we said on the most basic, explanation would be them going after the ship. And it looks like that turned out to be. I'm a little upset that my Sid theory did not play out. I think that was infinitely more interesting now that I haven't seen this episode, but that's why I'm not a writer, right?
It was a missed opportunity, though. And we kind of felt like if that didn't happen, what was it going to be? And it wouldn't be as exciting. And kind of here we are, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably was a story that was even probably more exciting, but again, we're not writers. I like that Gonki had there was a Find My Gonki, option on him, right. And luckily they had that enabled because had they not, they wouldn't have been able to find him. I thought it was interesting that Omega found him, but Tech didn't. So.
Well, he was working on the speeder. And again, it goes back. You said, well, I wonder if the tower has any kind of special, reason except to make a call. Well, here you go. It was for them to be able to get a strong enough signal to be able to detect Gonki.
Yeah.
That's what she was plugging into is the big antenna.
Yep. Look at that. Jeff, thanks, man.
Yeah.
He's got my back. That Sid theory is a great one. I appreciate that. So yeah, we get into it. So it wasn't Sid, it was a kid by the name of Bernie, who we learn out a little bit later. He's sitting there flying that thing like he stole it. You see it; it's like kind of wonky everywhere and flying around as he's trying to do it.
And then he's able to land it nicely on a really difficult platform. That's like a swinging door.
Yeah.
Okay, Star Wars logic.
It's Star Wars logic, Star Wars science. There was what did you make of the tattoos? Like they never talked about him. They never brought him up. He looked like he had the two lines there, which is I got a theory about that. I got a theory about everything. So I think you never know with Dave Filoni, right? I mean, these are ultimately his stories, and who knows? Like he may have some idea to throw this character in later down the road, because he's done that before, right? But I think there was something so telling, so distinctive about the two lines on his throat compared to the other ones. Like even like Drake, he had some very unique markings, but they were kind of all over his body. Some of the other characters, some of the other kids had the same thing, but his are so distinctive. I just wonder if they did that intentionally so that if he decides to bring him back later, or they need the favor returned, whether it be now, later down the road, we know exactly who that's going to be. Anybody from now on in Star Wars that has two tattoos, bars on their throat is Bernie, right?
Right.
So
Benny.
we'll see.
Benny, not Bernie.
Benny, sorry, not Bernie. Weekend at Bernie's. Okay, so they get to the mining facility, and we get there. Interestingly enough, it was owned by the Techno Union, which I thought was kind of cool. Nice little throwback there. I got more on that a little bit later, though. The mine's locked down pretty tight, but the living quarters, not so much. Like these kids are kind of just living wherever, and that makes sense. This jerkface Mako is like, he's living down there under the security of his droids and everything else. But, the kids, not so much. They're kind of wide open there and open to all the extreme environment type stuff. So I got a chuckle out of too when he got the he finds that protein bar, the rations on the floor, and like picks it up and starts eating it.
Dusts it off and just basically starts chowing down.
Yeah. So no longer it's the 5-second rule, but the 5-day rule there.
And when you're that hungry, I mean, and again, they're sharing a bowl of soup effectively for a whole crowd of kids. I mean, gosh, you feel bad for them that it's that extreme, right?
Yeah. Well, I got it. So I the Lady Proxima stuff, I think that's probably the most on the nose analogy or parallel here that we've seen in Star Wars, where these kids are kind of doing that.
Unkar Plutt was another one though. That one seems pretty relevant as well, because it was, you have all this stuff. Well, you gave me more portions for it last week, but now you're gonna cut me off.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the same way. Like that came in, Watto. I mean, not Watto to some extent, but they're not really.
He was a legitimate businessman.
Enslaved. What's that?
He was a legitimate businessman, although he owned a slave.
Yeah, he had a slave. But yeah, all of these characters, I mean, they're all kind of cut from the same cloth in terms of just being bad bosses. But it is kind of sad that these kids are working for essentially food and water. Like food and water it's not so much a commodity as much as it is a currency, So it was good to kind of see the state of all that. And that gets a little bit later, we get into how this is just a microcosm of what's going on with the Empire and the galaxy at large, and the evil that's kind of starting to sprout at some of the lower levels because of the Galactic Empire.
Right.
But yeah, we're introduced to Mako the Jerkface. I did like that Benny called the Bad Batch amateurs. He's talking about how he stole it from a bunch of amateurs there. And of course, in true form, Mako kind of downplays the ship, saying like, oh, yeah, it's a cool ship, but man, this is high risk, and I'm gonna have to tear this thing down. Don't know if you're really going to make it to the top now, but you're not going to be a top earner, that kind of thing. But as a kind of party favor, he gives him Gonki, which was a great line a little bit later. He's like, what am I going to do with a
defective power droid?
A battery at that point, just walking around with battery. He does have that line. Mako says always takes care of his crew. And even on the first watch, when I saw that, I thought, okay, he was definitely made to look, kind of shady, but that's really
total narcissist through and through.
Yeah. We really get to find out more about him and where he's at a little bit later. So Omega does find Gonki at that point, and they're like 100 meters east or whatever from the location there. They get the skiff working, and I don't know if you noticed, but when that skiff is taking off, it's like backfiring.
Yeah, it's like puffing out big clouds of smoke. Yeah,
and there's like fire down at the bottom too. But I thought that's interesting because, and I get it visually, we can relate to it, but like I've never known like a combustible engine in Star Wars is like never been done that I know of.
Well, but even like pod racers and stuff would, puff smoke and explode and do all sorts of stuff. But I don't know, that thing was carrying like 700 pounds worth of people. So, I mean, it's designed for like one person and maybe a satchel, and not them and all their gear and their kit and everything else.
Yeah. So from there, the Bad Batch, they go after, they track down Gonki. Wrecker and Omega have a say in kind of stopping Benny as he's about to leave. But yeah, that was a good moment for her too, right? I mean, she seemed like she seemed more as part of more of the team. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a more certified member of the team for her own self than she ever has than in any other episode. And a lot of that, I think I do credit to the last episode where she kind of had that heart to heart with Tech there at the very end. But there's a lot of examples like that.
I like that Tech gives her more complicated tasks, or at least they sound fancy and complicated to us.
Yeah.
Go and triangulate the blah, whatever it is, and she's like, I'm on it. I can do it. And she just starts going to town on it and actually is successful with it. So it's kind of cool seeing her be trusted with those activities that that Tech would normally do. But he's also like, well, I need to prioritize this. But she's fully capable and she can knock it out and she can handle it.
Did you, there was a bit of Stockholm syndrome going on here too with Benny. And we didn't necessarily get to see it with the other kids, but he was almost defending him, defending him in terms of or defending Mako for what was going on, oh, he's doing his best and, we're all contributing, right? He's kind of bought into this whole thing and just this is kind of what his life is like. And this is what, it's not his fault, which is kind of weird, but.
Well, I mean, but I think some of that is he doesn't really know either because he's just hearing what he's fed. I mean, it's like the propaganda machines in different countries and whatever too, right? Of, we're all making sacrifices. We're all having to cut back. It's been a tough season. Profits are down. I mean, that's the message as they're always coming out. And they don't see Mako partaking in all of these extravagant meals or stuffing his face like he was, behind closed doors and behind, the protection of droids. So it's understandable that they would feel like they're all in this together and they're all struggling, to do this. And Mako is this father figure that is taking care of all of these, all these kids. I mean, it's like taking care of the Goonies almost.
It's so funny. I was just talking about the Goonies last night in great detail.
How am I not surprised?
Yeah, how are you not surprised? So, yeah, I know, I would agree. Like they didn't know any better. They didn't know any different. Whereas in Stockholm Syndrome, I mean, you're usually aware that someone's kind of done that to you. And so you become more sympathetic and you kind of fall in line. Or for them, this is just reality. This is like the everyday, there's nothing different, right? They don't know any better until, of course, the very end. So Benny decides, well, they convince Benny to go ahead and take him over to the ship. By the way, stealing is a skill. Like, I don't understand how this is even an argument or why it's being discussed. But if there's anything you take away from Star Wars or this show, stealing is a skill. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. We get to the...
Please send your complaints to Mike at
Yeah, let me throw the number up here real quick. So they kind of come up with their little operation debrief here. They're going to get in there. They can't really use blasters because of the Ipsium and how explosive that can be. That could go really wrong. Although they did use that at the very end, which
I know. And I love the comment though that Wrecker makes. We don't miss.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, yeah.
There was some good one-liners in there like that. Like I said, Wrecker I think was true throughout, and I thought Tech was too at the very, very end there with Omega. But
right.
We already talked about the smokestack, right? Every 60 seconds, there was a little bit of. I thought that was kind of cool. Like I mean, this was about as action-packed as this episode got.
That was about it.
And it only lasted 60 seconds, but I thought it was fairly decent. I would have given the rope to Wrecker. I don't know that I would have trusted any piece of that smokestack to put the clamp on there, or put the claw on the way he did. I'd have been like, here, dude, hold this and don't let go because I'm going to go down this. You know what I mean? So, but
yeah, but I mean, still, I mean, it was secured because it was wrapped over and you got all the tension from it. And you had Wrecker right there to catch it if something did go wrong.
I don't know. I don't agree.
Wrecker had to keep the kid in line too, I guess. Because the kid kept trying to run away.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. We had that oh boy moment from Wrecker when he got to the very top because he is scared of heights. If anybody didn't know that. And then that line of where, Benny's like freaking out because he doesn't think they're going to make it. He says, you got to bail before it's too late. And that's when Omega turns and says, we don't do that, which I thought was kind of cool. I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then Hunter gets to show how awesome he is by running down that stack there at the very end. Okay, but then this is where the most important piece, like the deepest moment in this episode. All right, you can already hear the sarcasm or facetiousness coming out of me.
Yep.
But they show the inside of them. They'd already shown it before, but we get a very good look at the inside of the mines. And did you notice just how well equipped the handrails are on all of those bridges?
They were very well equipped.
And I've got questions about that because if this was run by the Techno Union, which were largely comprised of droids, what does it say that the Techno Union cared enough about their employees that they were able to put handrails in for droids where the Empire can't put handrails in for anybody, much less their own employees?
Well, but we have well established the Empire does not care about anybody, and they're willing to cut corners for all purposes in order to fund the Death Star.
Yeah, I guess that's probably on par. I should have expected that.
Well, it's been your comment for years now. So,
but it was like
what you've taught me.
Yeah, it was like handrails for days. Like it was like an overuse of handrails. Like they were overcompensating for the lack of handrails in all of Star Wars content prior to this episode, and they just made up for it in one big shot, which I thought was kind of cool.
I want to see the screenplay, and I want to see in the storyboard. I want to see that they made comments that said, "We need to overdo it with handrails because we are so sick of no handrails in Star Wars. We're going to put enough handrails in here for the next 3 years of content."
Yep.
And we're going to thank the Techno Union.
Jess says, are you calling Mako a liar when you say he doesn't care about his crew?
Yes.
Yes. No, he says he cares. Of course he cares. Sure he does. No, he doesn't give a crap. Okay, but yeah, lots of handrails. Pretty darn excited about that. We get the little shot of the hyperdrive's been removed. They're trying to get everything back up, and Omega mentions that they've got they've still got to get past the ray shields, right? So that's when they agree that her and Benny are going to head out to the control center or whatever to kind of turn off the ray shields so they can actually get away from the facility. And then they cut over to what I called Mako's Buffet Palace, which he's like just throwing. It's like me at Chipotle. He's just like throwing food back, by the pound here.
This is actually quite accurate. This is like you at Chipotle.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, we've had Chipotle together at least 3 times now that I can think of.
Twice,
Maybe
like in the last
4.
30 days, I think. So, man, I'm still scarred and still emotionally healing from some of these experiences. Yes.
Yeah, but there's like no shortage of food. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just more indicators that this guy's a real
I'm pretty sure he
piece of
had
work.
food like on the shelf too. I mean, he literally had just food everywhere, and he couldn't eat it fast enough. It was really gross. It was almost,
It was.
like, why do you need to scarf it so fast? I mean, just spooning one over here and cramming a chicken in the other mouth. I mean, I just didn't understand why he was in such a hurry.
Yeah.
Like, slow down, enjoy your spoils, man.
I was going to use that scene and put it into like a little animated GIF and put something to it. I'm not sure what to use it for, but I started the process and it's pretty funny if I do say so myself. Okay, so excuse me. We learned that Mako has an inner circle and they can't just go in, turn the ray shields off. They got to get this card, which of course leads us to, meeting some of the other crew. And this all plays into the trailer. Like we had seen the trailer. I don't remember what we commented on this part. I was trying to remember exactly what we had said when we saw the bridge and the kids. And I think that there was that one shot where they all kind of turn. We all know exactly what happens now, but it was kind of cool that we got to see the other kids that were involved in this. I think here's one part that escaped me. So were they both these scouts that went out looking for suckers like this and they were mining this whole thing by themselves? Or was this just a small, like the quote inner circle or wannabe inner circle kids? I didn't get the scope or the scale of how many kids or how many people were actually working for Mako.
Yeah, we only see about, I don't know, maybe call it 20
12.
total.
Okay.
Well,
I
think on the last scene, you see there's a lot more kids kind of all around. So round up, I guess. Just give it. Yeah, why he was out on his own. Maybe this was his day off, Benny, and that's why he went out onto the northern part of, the plains or wherever it was he called it. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me why they would be outside the mines if this is what they do, and this is their home.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed a little bit convenient. But whatever. Yeah. I mean, everybody ventures out on their day off, I guess, just to see what's going on.
Yep.
I don't know. Well, that's about that's all I got.
So he steals. Benny steals the key card or whatever from Drake. Not to be confused with the rapper. But Mako's speech when he starts in, you mentioned there about, well, we've all had to make sacrifices and go without, including myself. Like, if you've ever been,
anytime you point yourself out or someone points themselves out that they've made sacrifices too, immediately impeach that person and just go and take them down because they're lying to you and they're hiding something.
I was going to say that, and I can't tell you, to my knowledge, at least twice in my career, have I been in some kind of like meeting just before Christmas where the CEO comes out and, addresses the people and uses some like form of this sentence right here about how we've all had to make sacrifices and go without and things were tough and we're looking for a better year next year. And, PTSD for me, I guess,
and then you see the news with their paychecks
or the golden parachutes that they get after they, got
commit federal crimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, so Drake always wins is kind of the takeaway here. So he wins, Benny gets overlooked and this kind of drives Benny to do more, which wasn't going to bode well considering he was with Omega. I mean, it was all being telegraphed, right? That we were going to see something happen like that. And we've just seen enough probably Star Wars to kind of make that prediction. But what was interesting though, is like, it sounded like they only ate once a week, and at once a week they ate like a bowl of soup.
Right.
Which pretty rough.
And it doesn't seem enough. I mean, again, they're all famished. They're all starving. They're all thin, whereas Mako's got some bulk to him, I guess. But it's you can understand though a little bit where Benny's coming from. This is about your only opportunity in life. So that he would go back to that and say, no, there is a path for me here. I'm getting the right, encouragement, like, no, it is in my future. Like, this is attainable. I already got this big score. Now I've got, even though it's been not ideal, I've got it in me to be able to do this, and I'm young, right? I'm going to be able to attack these. He's still got that kind of hunger, so to speak, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can understand at least why he has that, because there's nothing else for him to try to go do. So what else would he want to do except try to excel at the one thing that he's been doing? And he feels like he's, in the process of turning a corner as well.
Yeah. We at this point we get to Omega and Benny kind of having a lot more dialogue, and this is where I think it started to kind of feel heavier in terms of just conversations. We were getting more from Omega at this point, right? They were kind of talking about the differences between earning your food versus competing for your food, right? Very different, more nuanced there. And Benny's kind of expressing how he's hell bent on making an impression with Mako because he needs to, right? He feels like that's the only way he can get ahead in life here. And this is where he puts in the codes. We saw that he's kind of doing it in the background, and we knew that he was going to be a rat there.
Right.
But then he kind of has that interesting line. He's like, wow, he's impressed that they treat Omega, like one of them, meaning either adults or just part of the crew, part of the family. I mean, there's a lot of ways to take that, but he's very aware that this is a very different relationship between older people and people his age. And he kind of wants some of that. And so it's things like that it made me think, I wonder if he is going to come back at some point. It really depends on how long the series goes or what we've got planned going down the road. But I think they've done enough here again to kind of world build with some of the characters a little bit. So I don't know. There may be too much there or not enough there. We'll see. We'll see. Have to see how that goes.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
she's and Omega's just kindness, right? She gives him her ration bar because, again, no one should have to go hungry. No one should have to compete for food. Everybody should be able to share, even if you don't have a lot. Everyone shares what you have because you're all at the same level effectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just makes that more powerful of someone who's willing to give what they have and go a little bit hungry, even though she's the haves rather than the have not. But I think it was just, again, we've seen it many times before, but again, good affirmation that other people get to experience that, and they can see what is possible, and what if they are given the choice and they have another opportunity or another path in front of them, that they can reference that and choose a different path. So in the end, whenever these kids overthrow Mako, they have the opportunity to do things differently, and you already see that they are, right? Drake is calling, for Benny for chow time, rather than it being so competitive, right? So you already start to see some of that dynamic changing, and Omega, for her little piece of it, is impacting Benny in this moment, and of course makes him feel like dirt because he's turned her in, and here she is taking care of him and just trying to be a nice person and be kind.
And she's spitting truth. I mean, she's talking about, why don't you just leave, right? It's clear he doesn't care about you.
But that's naivete. I mean, that's the other part of it too, of that youthful, like, we'll just leave. We all know it's like, I saw to not bring it down, but I saw this advertisement yesterday. I think I was leaving work, when leaving isn't an option, about domestic abuse. And it's a very true thing. Like, it's easy to say from the outside, like, well, just leave, just get out of the situation. But you're trapped in your own different way, right? Either you are trapped emotionally, or you're trapped because you don't know what you would do if you left. And that is everything you've ever known, right? And I'm not trying to conflate the two. I'm obviously Star Wars versus, something as serious as that or not. But the general premise, though, of where someone's at whenever you're asking them to say, well, just make a different decision. Just go. I mean, you've seen this planet, though. What is he going to go do?
Yeah.
There's not a whole hell of a lot of opportunity here, right? It's not the land of opportunity, and he's a kid. And who knows where his parents are, if they're even alive, and what he's able to do. And he has no confidence that he can do anything else. So what's the motivation for him to do it, rather than saying, well, no, I think I can do it here. And I'm getting just enough positive encouragement that I think it's actually a reality and a possibility that I can actually achieve it.
Yeah. And he confirms as much. I mean, the next line he says, besides, I can't leave, it's my home. It's what I know, right? To your point, this is all that he can do. This is what he's, all he's ever known. So why would he leave? Right. And that line hits Omega really hard, Like they made a point to kind of show her face, and she's so focused on trying to get the data right about the coordinates or whatever the codes are for the ray shield, and suddenly he mentions it's my home, and on that word home, she like looks up because that hits her. Like again, the most important thing to her right now is family and home, because of what's happened to her, and so it strikes a chord with her. And of course, she's willing. This is the one part about Omega in this episode that I think was still very real and still continuing to happen, that I think will have some implications a little bit down the road, is she's still so pure of heart that she's still willing to go help everybody no matter what. And it does set her up for being double crossed, as though she was in this episode. Like she was really double crossed. And we're going to have to see like where that lands with her. Like how much does that jade her later down the road? I don't think they're going to play it up too much because it's a kid's show, but I think they're starting to kind of take the edge off her a little bit, right? Or wear her down a little bit more in terms of just how much she believes and how much she wants to put trust into people, because bad things happen. Yeah.
On the other side, though, I think she was able to still reach out and meet him part way and help him understand. That's why we're here. That's why this ship means so much to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's our home. That's like how you feel about this place is how we feel about that ship.
Yeah.
And that's why this is important. Again, you see him understand that too. And so while I agree with an extent, they have been rounding that edge, and maybe there's going to be some amount of, I don't know, bitterness, or reality will finally, present itself to her of like, man, I keep getting screwed with these friendships or these relationships, these people I keep meeting. I'm so nice to them. But I think there's been enough examples too, where the converse of that's been true, where people have made a mistake, but then they come back and they try to do the right thing. And he was still helping them, even though he was semi being threatened. But he did help. And then he did come back around to do the right thing and try to help everyone at the very end. And again, I think she realizes this, and she's very aware in this kind of way that this situation isn't his fault that he's in, and he's just behaving in the ways that his environment is setting him up for, and that basically the only way to survive is to continue to behave in these ways, because they don't have the cumulative competency to do anything different with a character like Mako, who is able to give them just enough while really not giving them much of anything.
Yeah.
And so I think she's still trying to figure all of that out. So I am interested to see if they do. I'm with you though. I'd love to see that come back and get some sort of retrospect in that from her, to see how she interprets all of these experiences. But I think in general, to the point you made, is a bit of a kid show. And so I think we continue to see enough positivity in response to what Omega is doing to where it's probably not going to jade her.
Yeah. I mean, so you think like, yeah, when I think of characters like that, like let's use the most extreme example, and that the extreme example of hope, which would be Leia, in my opinion, right? Ever eternally hopeful. Like she's synonymous with hope, and verbally, literally and figuratively and all that. But at the same time, she had a lot of hard lessons in life that led her to not always put blind trust into people. And I think that's where Omega, who knows, right? They could double down on that, and that just becomes her kind of quality, right? She's just so willing to do that and sacrifice her life or whatever, sacrifice whatever it is for anyone at that point. I don't think Leia was really there. Like she had been in this fight long enough to know that you couldn't just go do that, especially with somebody like the Galactic Empire, right? There was just no trusting them whatsoever.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, where there was somebody, or where there was an opportunity to help somebody, absolutely, she was there to inspire them, to give people hope that there was, better days ahead. And so Omega, for me, feels like she is kind of going down that path. I just don't know that so far, right? I just wonder how many times is she going to get burned before she does get a little bit of jadedness in her. And jadedness is probably not even the right term. Probably just the more, streetwise or more aware, right?
That second thought before doing something.
Before just blindly going, have my food.
Right.
You're a good person. Yeah, you made a mistake. Come on over. That's all those are very kid qualities and very optimistic and, that sort of thing. But I do want to see her develop in that way. I still think she can be kind of that beacon of hope like Leia. I just would like to see a little bit more, groundedness coming to her with what's really happening in the galaxy. So
I'm conflicted with how I feel about that because I think there's
well,
a
I am too.
certain,
I'm like sitting here struggling, going back and forth. Like, do I really feel that? Like, yeah, I do. And then 2 seconds later, I'm like, no, I don't. Maybe I don't.
I mean,
But
it's the
sorry.
realistic nature that you would expect as someone gets older, more mature, a lot more experiences, that they would just inherently have a more realistic view of how the world operates and how
Hmm.
your experiences, and you've seen it and you're like, wow, man, I have been taken advantage of. But there's something refreshing about her optimism and her willingness to step outside of her and just give willingly and give without any kind of expectation of getting anything in return, just
Yeah.
because it's the right thing to do, in her opinion. So it is refreshing to have that. And I think the one thing I keep coming back to is I'm not exhausted by that yet. And which is actually surprising because usually by this point I'd be like, oh my gosh, okay, we get it. You're a little goody two shoes.
Hmm.
But I think she's had to learn enough and she's had to struggle enough with some other things that it has helped balance that a little bit without her having to go the jaded route or go to that more adult. Like earlier in the season, we talked about, she needs to be a kid. And this was,
Right.
I forgot the character's name early on the first episode, but, you just be a kid. And Hunter was talked about it, I wish I could give her that life, but I just can't. This is her being able to retain some of that for at least a little while longer. And so the more we've heard those things, I'm hesitant to encourage that to happen too quickly. And so I think that's why I'm reserved on making that comment too loudly because I don't know that I'm ready for her to take that turn and have that shadow kind of cast over her, because once it's cast, it's hard to get rid of that. I mean, it's just hard to get rid of that,
Yeah.
It takes time, and she'll be in her teenage years, so it's all doom and gloom for like the next 5 years.
Telling you, man, she's just growing up right before our eyes. We can't even.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Our little girl's growing up, Robert.
Yeah. Yeah, that she is. And right on cue, we cut over to Tech and Wrecker, and they're kind of working on the repairs. And Tech has that line of, Mako appears to be using his power and means as leverage over his workers. It's a similar tactic used by the Empire. Again, imitated behavior is what we're seeing here on a smaller level, and this gets reiterated a little bit later. This is where Hunter goes after the two kids and loses them. Fine, he was tired.
No,
We've all been there.
that part did rub me. I did justify it though. I found a way to justify it.
Okay, go ahead.
Had to do this last week too. Was that they just know the tunnel so well that they were able to escape. They were able to just elude him because familiarity with what they were doing. And again, when you have this stinky ore and metal environment and rock, it's not the same as being out in the wilderness where you have the wind and everything else. You're in a very stale zone and not a lot of air movement. So I can see why maybe his hunter skills were diminished. There we go.
Chris Jones, Hunter apologist, ladies and gentlemen.
Cantina cast blamed.
Okay, so we then go over back to Omega and Benny. I almost call him Bernie again. Omega and Benny, and this is where Omega discovers, like, oh, wait a second, this Ipsium's not degraded at all. It's actually of good quality, and
right. The profit margins are on the up,
way up. This dude's kind of working you guys over here, and it's right at that point that Mako walks in, because he's been turned over. She's been turned over by Benny. He said, sorry, I had to, that's my boy kind of thing. I mean, it's just, it was kind of sad. It was like, oh, this really sucks. Cause I mean, we didn't even talk about prior to that, like right before all of this happened, she like gave him her food, like right. Again, just, I don't know. It was,
and
really
now
tough.
He's got this data now too, where he's not sure what he's looking at. And so you're right. The corner has been turned for him, but it's too little too late in that regard.
So and then from here, it's all about this confrontation with Mako right out on the bridge with Rails. There was a moment too when we were, if you look at it,
the Indiana Jones bridge.
Yeah, I had that in that
from Temple of Doom.
Did I put that in the notes? You weren't supposed to look at that, or did we just think the same thing?
Yeah. Well, I'm amped about Dial of Destiny too, so I'm like an Indiana Jones overload right now.
Yeah, right. Everything is Indiana Jones right now. I mean, no, but you're right. Like even just the lighting, right, and the smoke that was kind of coming back in the background, it looked like we were down in the mines where, of that movie as well. Yeah, we just missing him, Kali Ma, pulling the heart right out. Yeah, so where was I? Boy, I got totally derailed by, you see that?
Let's talk Indiana Jones. Derailed, nicely done.
By Temple of Doom, yeah. Okay, so Tech and Wrecker out there on the bridge as well. We kind of get this standoff here. We got the line that you mentioned earlier about we don't miss, which I love that they kind of said that there. And then his kind of ace in the under the sleeve or whatever it is. he's got Omega being brought out, and he's going to chuck her out unless they, kind of put their arms down and turn themselves over. And this is where Benny finally, he gets to kind of redeem himself in sort of a way, where he comes out and exposes Mako for, the high profits and taking food from them. And of course, the oldest kid, right, the number one kid, Drake, is like, let me see that thing, pulls that data pad, starts reading it over. And it's kind of, the gig is up at this point. Everybody's kind of turning against Mako because they know this is, their whole lives are basically a lie at this point. Right. Everything they've known has become a lie in a matter of just a few seconds here, which I guess he was expecting them to kind of, if they weren't going to throw him over the bridge, he was going to go one way or the other at that point. I did like, though, where, the Omega, like, I don't know if people are talking about this, but not only did she, she saw Hunter down there, she kind of knew what the plan was. Who knows if they'd ever gone over this before or whatever, but the fact that she trusted him at that to that extent, right? You talk about teams development and where they are. I mean, this is like overperforming in terms of where they're at in those stages. But I did enjoy the fact that not only did she was okay with going over, but she was like deliberately trying to make herself go over and pull down the droid at the same time. Like, that is a level of confidence and trust in not, only herself and her abilities, but also Hunter's, which I thought was a good moment. That's probably not getting talked about enough. Sorry.
Right. I mean, she had to really manipulate the droid too, because if you watch it, she's doing a couple of things to both delay how it's going and then make sure also it goes over, because if it comes up, it could easily just shoot, or I guess stun with the baton, whatever weapon it had, and become a threat. So she still has to take care of that while also timing it right to be able to go with Hunter. But yeah, you're right. The confidence when she like reaches out, and I almost used that for the title card because it was a really cool scene. It was just way oversaturated. I couldn't get it to work as well as I wanted to, but that was actually pretty cool. And again, I like that we see that confidence where she knows he'll be there and she trusts herself to be able to be in the right spot as well, and that they'll make that connection. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, at some point, you always look at like the foreshadowing of, well, we're seeing this person, maybe they'll come back. Well, is this situation going to not work out at some other point later on in the season? And it's hard not to be a little pessimistic that something is going to go wrong with that team unity, and it's going to throw things off just a little bit, and something is not going to happen. More so than what we already had with in the previous episode with Tech and Omega, him being a little late to trying to catch her. Yeah.
I think I don't think you're off base. I mean, I think it's bound to happen. You would expect it to happen, right? Otherwise, we have these perfect characters that never make mistakes, or everything just goes 100% right. And
Dale just made a mistake.
Oh, there you go.
She's definitely
think
force
about
sensitive.
This. No, he's got okay. Let's just talk about this real quick, okay?
No, you and Dale can talk about this. I'm done.
Dale, I'll hit you up offline. We'll talk about that. She's force sensitive, but that was kind of hard for her to do. So.
No, I mean, it was very, but again, you just said that it was a really high performing team though. So
because a high performing force driven team is what I meant to say. Yes.
Got you.
Okay. So okay. So he gets saved, and then everybody kind of turns on Mako, and I mean, what a klutz. I mean, he falls over the handrails that are at least up to his waist, whatever, uses his little cane there to kind of hold on. And, there's that moment there where Benny comes up to the handrail, grabs him by the arm, and like Mako tries to pull him down. Like, it's very clear. It wasn't clear to me on the first viewing. Like, it looked like he just slipped. And then the second viewing, I watched it with the audio descriptions on, and it does say that he did.
He grabbed his hand, or he grabbed his shoulder?
He grabbed his hand.
Okay, yeah, because
like it was a hand in the claw.
Right? Yeah, claw.
And so he was the claw. And so he was pulling down with his claw. He tried to pull Benny in because he makes I forget what the line is about. I don't know. He says something like,
"Yeah, you're going with me, basically.
You're going with me. You're double crossing me, or whatever it was."
And then Drake actually is the one that comes over and holds Benny in place and keeps him from going over and pulls him back. Which, again, just kind of shows you the lack of competition. All of a sudden, they're all in the same boat. Mm-hmm. Unifying against a common evil.
Yep. I always said that Han was force sensitive as well. So Dale, just more to talk about later. Okay. So he's dead, and then we move into, if you could only see the look of enthusiasm on Jonesy's face right now. I mean, disgust. Sorry.
CantinaCast.com/YouTube.
Here, let me throw up the banner real quick.
Right.
Okay, then we get to the final, the very end of the episode. We're getting the kind of pre-flight takeoff. Wrecker gives Gonky that big bear hug there at the end, which was kind of cool.
He
And
gets a
Benny's
stuffed
back.
animal back.
Oh, well, he was in there with the Tuco doll at the very end. I thought I forgot all about that. So again, it's like, what was it? It was like very Wrecker. It was all about Wrecker. This is your life kind of thing. All of his finest moments and quirks came out in this episode more than anybody else.
Right.
But Benny swings around. Of course, he's living the high life. He's got fruit. He's eating. Driving the skiff like no big deal. I double crossed you twice, but bygones are bygones kind of thing.
But it was really telling though when Omega again follows up. Well, what are you going to do now? Like you can go anywhere you want, type of thing. And he's like, "No, we've been over."
Yeah, more of the same.
Yeah, no, this is my home. We have a chance to do something. I mean, clearly they have something profitable, so why not, right? I mean, it makes sense. They're already doing it. This is kind of their skill. And he's like, "Hey, if you need a thief, you know where to find one."
Foreshadowing, maybe.
It's possible,
or maybe not. Yeah, and then we get to the conclusion, right? Omega's conclusion that the Empire is not the only threat. We've seen so many in the galaxy like Mako, and Andor is one of the first things that kind of pops up to mind. Even though it's outside of this show, I mean, we've had plenty of examples in this show, and even in Star Wars Rebels, really, lots of examples of that, right? But for Andor, I mean, it was very similar. You've got people that are being enslaved and working and all of that, but that is the Empire speaking on that one. But Tech's conclusion is equally important, and I think this is where balance is that we were talking about.
There's more of us, Poe.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Wrong line.
Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, he says, unfortunately, yes. However, there are many like us out there as well, and that is something. So, I mean, it's a yin and yang. It's the balance between, things could be really bad, but there's a lot of bad people out there, but there's a lot of good people out there. Light and dark side is essentially what they're talking about, because this is a Force sensitive show. What were you going to say? Sorry.
I just can't with you now. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with you.
Blame Dale. He got me started on this whole thing.
I would talk after the show.
Yeah.
No, again, this was the lesson, right? So Omega continues to see, this evil in the galaxy, or these bad people that is not just the Empire. It's just common people taking advantage, but it's that desperation, I think, is what we're seeing, right? Mm-hmm. Something has crumbled around it. Democracy and the Republic, and not that the Republic was perfect in any stretch of the imagination, but everything has crumbled and just fallen apart and gone into chaos in some areas. And she's starting to see what can come out of people if given the opportunity. But it was really cool though that it was Tech though that came back and gave that counterpoint, because of all people, why would it be Tech, right? And so it was great that Tech kind of had this more, I guess, open moment, maybe not emotional, but an open moment of saying, you know what, but we're pretty good people, and there's people like us out there, and like Rex and like Echo, that want to do something different and want to help, not just fight the Empire, but also help situations like this one in particular, right? Where we can make a difference one by one. And that's a good thing too. We don't have to change the galaxy. We can do small things one by one. And at some point, this will accumulate. This will snowball. It will grow into something. And he's not saying all of those things, but that's that natural thing that I think Omega will start to see over the next 60, 70 years of her lifespan, because she's probably still alive. So,
right. Yeah.
Because, Force users never die.
Exactly. They have the Force to... That's so funny, because we have a Patreon show coming up about immortality in Star Wars. So, but more on that later. Eventually, at some point, right? I got canned for just a second, but we're coming back with that show. I promise you. Well, more on that a little bit here in just a second. But so overall, again, not my favorite episode. I think it had its moments. There were certainly, not to quote Leia, but you certainly have them. But this one, I just really question whether or not it had to be 2 episodes. We learned the lesson that greed's bad. I don't know. Communism works. Maybe it doesn't. There's a lot of bad people out there in the galaxy. And, I wonder again, I don't know where this is going to go, or what comes of this episode outside of some of the Easter eggs and some of the things that may have been planted for world building a little bit later. And if they don't, that's fine too. I think if you're looking ahead at the next 6 episodes, I mean, we've got some pretty good stuff out there. I mean, there's some good titles at least to kind of speculate on. About, especially with the next episode, Metamorphosis, right? I think we're going back to mythology with this one. I want your thoughts on that too. But I don't know, any kind of final thoughts on the arc? What you felt, how you felt about it, one way or the other.
No, ready to move on from it. Actually, I think again, close this story out. Let's start getting into the meat here. What does metamorphosis mean? What is it that we are going to see change? Of course, metamorphosis is moving from one aspect of your life into another, right? You think of like a butterfly and then those types of visuals, right?
Yeah.
Of truly growing. And this could mean so many different things. It could be about Omega specifically as she learns to use the Force. And I'm just trolling y'all now.
It was only a matter of time before he got on board. Thank you so much for that, by the way.
Right. Yeah. So, but again, or is it something that the metamorphosis of the Empire or what the Emperor is doing? Could it be something like that, or could it be just this change of the Empire as it pertains to the clones more specifically? And so I think those are the things that or we could go back to Crosshair. I mean, God, we need to go back to Crosshair, right? We haven't been to Crosshair since episode 3.
Yeah.
Episode 3. It's been 7 episodes since we've had any sighting of Crosshair, and we've even had a believer wannabe. So it's time for some Crosshair. And so I'm calling it now. This episode is a Crosshair episode. Okay. Crosshair will be in this episode. I have nothing to base this off of except my passion for Crosshair. And that has been 7 episodes, and 8 would just be too many.
It would be too many. I'll give you my take on what the name means in a second, but Stephanie has a very astute observation. She says, what's kind of funny is that at no point was the Bad Batch there to help those kids. They just wanted their ship, which is actually not wrong. That's very true. Now,
but in defense, though, they weren't really around.
Oh, here we go.
Kids.
See, you're such an apologist of Hunter.
They didn't really know that there were all these kids until they actually got into it and all around it. So they didn't understand the scope of what was going on either. They just kind of stepped into it and they're like, all right, this is a little bit weird. But they probably see the stuff in the galaxy and like whether or not you can't help everybody type of thing, even though they'd like to do. I am contradicting what I just said. But I mean, they didn't quite know everything that was going on. They didn't know they had this tyrant of a leader in Mako, right, either. So I think some of that, it could have just been this was a kind of a tough conditions or something like that. They were just making ends meet. This is all over the galaxy. What are they going to do about it? They didn't know about Mako and what was going on. So
you just have a crush on Hunter. That's all it is.
No, it's tough to be a leader, man. It's tough to be a leader and make those hard calls, especially when you got everybody with an opinion, but no one willing to go and stick their necks out for it.
Okay. All right. Jonesy had a tough day at work today. Here's my thoughts on
tough day at work.
Here are my thoughts on metamorphosis. I think in true Star Wars fashion, it's probably going to have a couple different meanings. We're probably going to see different aspects where you can apply the word metamorphosis to. I think Hunter has got to come back at this point. I think Crosshair has to come back at this point. Like I'm with you, like 8 episodes in and we don't have anything to go off unless he's just in every single episode from here on out, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I still think we are long due for him. So if we're seeing him struggle with who he is right now and the impacts that, of the last episode with Cody and, really starting to question who he is and is he on the right team kind of thing, maybe there's some kind of metamorphosis that needs to happen with him to kind of come back to the team. That seems like a far stretch for the name, but I think he's going to be in the episode either way. I think we could also be getting metamorph. I think for Omega, I think there's probably something there, or the team itself, moving on to that next level. Maybe they're done with this whole kind of Sid thing and mission of the week, and they really want to go and do something bigger with their lives. Whether that's meaning, going to Rex and being a part of that.
Do you really feel like they've crossed that threshold? I mean, it doesn't feel like they have.
They haven't. I think they would have to. Yeah, I would think they would have to. This episode would have to be dedicated to that. Like we'd have to actually see the initial pieces of that metamorphosis, or they just kind of
point was.
Yeah, or fast track it in some way.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of runway left here with 6 episodes, honestly.
Right.
I think the other one that I was thinking of as far as metamorphosis goes is the believer quote, and I'm using air quotes here because I don't know what they're calling themselves, right? But if there is some kind of a change where they take these clones, like we talked about, and they make them part of this Phase Zero Dark Trooper or whatever program those characters are from, right? They've got to put them through some kind of a change to recondition them so they're not the clones of before and they're the clones of new. And maybe that we get to see what that change looks like so that they become more loyal to the Galactic Empire versus their own brothers, right? That could be an explanation as well.
I will say this, though. The only thing that would really upset me about this next episode is if Metamorphosis somehow wanted to go back and focus on Echo before we went back to Crosshair. I think that would actually upset me. Usually my expectations are usually pretty tempered, and I'm pretty flexible with where we go, and whether it meets my wishes doesn't always matter very much to me. But in this case, if we went back to Echo so quickly after he left, and while I understand that does make sense to do in some ways, I would be pretty upset because we have been away from Crosshair so long after what happened with Cody and what he did for Cody.
Yeah.
And not having any kind of any bringing any of that back around would just feel wrong, unless they're just going to hit it super hard right at the end of the season, which I think is just kind of disappointing in that way, because I feel like we're missing a key component of the Bad Batch, and we're just not getting any component of the Bad Batch there.
Yeah.
You know, and I know some people were very critical of Solitary Clone, saying this isn't a Bad Batch episode. Well, no, Crosshair is part of the Bad Batch in that story.
Yeah.
And he
for sure
needs to be more involved in that story, I think. And as we get to these last handful of episodes, that time is really coming due now. And we need to start establishing that now, because we don't necessarily need to be with Crosshair every single episode like we were early on in last season. But I think that we need to start to see him more regularly, because if he is a critical part of the last arc, then we need to start making sure that we really care about this character again, and that we start to give him more limelight in of where he's currently at, so those episodes mean something later on. It means something more than what they do if we were just to jump into it at this point, right?
So let me ask you.
That's where I would be. That's where I would have some heartburn if we don't go back to Crosshair, but we go back to like an Echo or something. I love Echo, make no mistake.
Sure,
but that's kind of where I sit on that one, though.
No, your point's well taken, and I agree 100%. Like, co-sign all of that. Like let me ask you a question though about Crosshair. Is there any doubt in your mind that Crosshair is not going to? We've never really even talked. I've never asked your opinion of this, I think, but is there any doubt in your mind, or do you have any doubt whether or not Crosshair is going to come back to the team? Do you think his life is set with the Galactic Empire? That's his fate, or do you think we're going to see? I don't want to call it a redemption story, but him just come back over to the good guys.
Man, I mean, I'd love for him to, but I think it's going to be one of those, is like a Vader redemption story almost, where you do the right thing, but there's a sacrifice that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, even if it means him walking away from everything in its entirety, kind of like at the end of season 1, something along those lines. But I see it's really hard for him to be reintegrated back with the Bad Batch in an ongoing, the family's back together type of thing. There's so much bad blood. There's so many things that have gone on. Even though we know there's that conflict in Crosshair, we know that there's a lot going on in his head that's just not coming out and that we're not hearing. And so I still have hope that those things are possible, but it's really difficult to see what that path actually looks like to get him there without them having any kind of interaction and conversation. It can't just all be in his head and all of a sudden show up and be like, yeah, well, I'm sorry, guys, or he just does one act and they bring him back in, because there's hurt feelings on both sides. He left the family as much as he feels the family turned on him. So there's a lot. There's a lot to iron out, and we need more than an episode or two to do that, I think, in order for, if they were actually going to stick with them ongoing into like a season 3, if you want. I think there's a lot of things that need to happen that I would love to see over the course of 3 or 4 episodes, 2, 3, 4 episodes, rather than just in 1 or 2 or 1.5 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I think
I don't know if I really answered the question. I got a lot of opinions about the topic in general, but
that's usually what you do. But yeah,
I just beat around the bush. Yeah,
just kidding. I think there's enough. I think there's enough space. I'm just starting to get really concerned because I keep looking at the schedule and I've got 6 episodes left. You're looking at the titles. I mean, I guess I could start putting, titles to things that I want to happen. Whether they do or not, it's a different story. But yeah, there's a lot of story here now. I mean, 10 episodes in where we're just, I've enjoyed the episodes, but man, come on, we got to get going on this other stuff here. There's some bigger fish to fry. And I mean, this is very, like, there's nothing wrong with this season. This is very similar to Clone Wars and Rebels and season 1 of the Bad Batch, right there. We've got the larger mythology episodes. They're usually sprinkled with these episodes that honestly can be anywhere. Like, this could have been, this particular episode, these 2 could have been at the very beginning of the season. They could have probably been just before the season finale arc. They can stick these anywhere they want. And so I think really what they do is they kind of lay out, here are the mythology episodes. This is where we want to set them up. And they just start filling in the blanks with, and I hate to say that because then people go, oh, well, they're just filler episodes. But no, they are character development episodes is really what they are. It's just a matter of where do we need the most? Where are they going to have the most impact? Where are they going to have the most payoff in the larger narrative of the season? And I think going in, at least the way they've kind of mixed this season up, 10 episodes in, I think I've had my fill, again, not to use that word, but I've had my fill of the character development stuff. I think we need to just move on and get into some of the mythology stuff because I just feel like we're running out of time at this point.
Yeah, let's get the story back in gear. I think
Yeah.
is kind of where we both sit on this one. I think we
Yep.
we feel like we know the characters, we know what's driving them. Now let's actually put them in situations where they have to make some sort of choice where all of this means something, to where they have to apply all of that, and the story feels like it actually takes a noticeable step forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll end this episode there.
You know who's with us, Albert?
No.
All of our fantastic live stream participants tonight.
And do you have names for all of these people?
Of course I have names. Gosh.
Some of them just snuck in, by the way. Cole,
They did.
looking
And
at you,
actually,
man.
so a special shout out to my boy, Risk. Cole was actually in the Houston area and gave me a shout. And we were able to get together and hang out a little bit last night after work. So that was really cool to be able to see him and hang out with him in person. Really cool guy. If you're ever in the area, please do let us know. Love to meet up with people and kind of shoot the breeze with some Star Wars and just good old life stuff. So, but yeah, big thanks to everyone. If you're listening to this, of course, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you want to come out and participate, lots of great chat tonight. Certainly appreciate everyone being out there. Emotional Evolution, Jonathan, Steph, Lauren, Nase, Sky, obviously Subdued, Wookie Talks, Dale, Jeff, Music Train, Miss Sunflower, Risk, and Gary. Thank you all so much for coming out. We know there's a lot of other people in the background. We hope next time you'll consider chatting with us in there. We like to put them up on screen, even though you don't always hear it on the podcast side of it. Albert is really good about flashing those up and getting some of those comments and giving some of that feedback out there too. So it makes this a lot of fun to be somewhat interactive, and it just, yeah, is a kind of a new level for us to be able to enjoy that. So thank you for everyone. Of course, a huge thank you to all of our Patreon members, of course, again. We really do appreciate your patronage.
Okay, and before we go, just to recap what we've got coming up.
Yeah.
This Saturday, we are doing The Mandalorian Season 3 Final Hype. So if you've never joined us for a Final Hype episode, we are going to give you all of the information that we're aware of that's not spoilers, right? Stuff that's been officially released, things that have come up in the trailer, clips, media stuff, whatever it is. We kind of pull all that together and kind of set the stage on that for Season 3. And we'll speculate on some of the things that either we're looking forward to is seen in Season 3, or I think one of the things I really like to do is go back to our final, or the episode, like the final episode for Season 2 that we did, and talk about all the things that we wanted to see, right? So kind of marry those two together and just make sure that we understand going into Season 3, what are some of the things that we were looking forward to or kind of left hanging at the end of Season 2. So it's always a really fun episode. It's probably going to be about an hour and a half. Sometimes those usually go about 2 hours, a little bit longer show, but that's this Saturday, February 25th. And then Sunday, which is, I got the date wrong on that one. Sunday, the 26th is when we're going to do our Fact Boy, which is from a certain point of view. We're going to come back with, let's see, Lauren's coming back. Cole's going to be here. We got Cab coming back, myself. Jonesy, do you mind sitting in on that one? Because Rob's not going to be able to make it. I'd hate to do that right on the air, but
yeah,
you have to say yes.
No pressure. Yeah, I have to say yes. Right?
Okay, cool.
I mean, it's my show too, I guess.
I got Rob's top 3 moments from Season 2, so I'm going to ask that you read those, and of course you can throw in yours. That's fine. I guess we'll listen to your opinion too, Jonesy.
Oh, I don't just have to be a talking head for Rob.
No, not this time.
Wow,
you got to do some homework, buddy. Sorry.
I'm feeling really conflicted in this opportunity you've afforded me.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so Sunday we're going to do our top 3 moments of The Mandalorian Season 2. So this is a carryover from the episode of the top 3 moments from Season 1 that we did. I don't know, it was like 3-4 weeks ago now at this point. So that'll be hopefully enough to get you going and ready for the March 1st, which is Wednesday. And that's when we'll come back and do. So Wednesday, that day of the show, we will come on and that night, on the 1st, and do a live stream of our breakdown of episode 1 or whatever. They're kind of going, like, was episode 17 now? Is that right?
I guess chapters.
Chapter 17, whatever they're doing with the title number.
I think so. You know, what was really amusing is I was watching Star Wars this week, and they were doing a recap of Mandalorian, but there was a lot of Book of Boba Fett in there too. It was just amusing to me that the integration of it all. We just view it as Mando now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
Doesn't
Exactly.
matter which show it actually was.
There was, well, no, sorry. I really want to do a show. We didn't get around to, I don't think we're going to have time, but I really want to do a show where we focused on all of the different Mandalorian clans and just talked about them. Even as brief of knowledge that we have with some of them, I thought that would be kind of cool because I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of those, but maybe I'll work some of that into the final hype episode on kind of what we can expect to see and with season 3 at some point, but more on that down the road.
Should be fun.
Lots of Star Wars.
Yeah, lots of Star Wars. So we hope everyone comes out on, of course, for every show, of course, but also that Mando season 1. Bring your excitement. Let us know what you loved about it. The chat should be pretty jumping that night as well. So we'd love to have everyone out there and talking to us. So make sure you're subscribing to the channel, cantinacast.com/YouTube. I know we joke about it, but if you'd subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when we're live, we would love for you to come out and chat with us and hang with us. And hello to Riley, sneaking there at the very end.
Yay, Riley.
She made it.
She made it. Okay, well, with Riley, we'll end the show there, and we'll see you guys here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.